Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video, a comparison of two different Thrunite flashlights. Here, the TN12 Pro, and here, the BSS version 5. Now, a lot of customers may look at both of these thinking they're in a similar form factor. 18650 lithium-ion powered batteries, very nicely done in both cases. But what are the differences? How do you make a decision between each one of these? Because although they are very similar in many ways, there are some definite differences in things that you might want to consider. So what we're going to do today, a little compare and contrast side by side. Look at these. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the things that you need to think about when you're looking at these two models? And so with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Thrunite who did provide these for review. And so when we're talking about the TN12 Pro and the BSS version 5, again, both very, very close in form factor. Now you'll see, first thing, the main difference looking at them at an initial glimpse, you do have a strike bezel on the BSS version 5. But here, as I take these and hold them side by side, I mean, really, when you look at the main form factor, extremely, extremely close. Close in diameter, close in build aesthetic, and close in pocket ride size. And that's the first thing. So let's flip the camera around and take a look at these in a little more detail. And so as we get into this, if you want to see more details on this Thrunite TN12 Pro, I did cover this in its own feature review, so feel free to take a look back if you want to get some more details. But the main thing here, again, and I just want to reiterate, the fact that the form factor is very, very close. I do think, and without really too much in the way of measurement, if you were to really average these out across the board, you're going to find they're basically the exact same dimensions overall. In terms of the size in your pocket, the way it's constructed, very similar. You'll notice that these both have side switches, they both have the tail switch, and they both have the ability to stand up. The exact same pocket clips, and really at an initial glimpse, the only thing that's really changing is the design aesthetic. Now, as we take a look a little bit closer at the TN12, tight knurling. So you'll see there, tight knurling. The actual, I would say, like pattern and ribbing on the tail switch here is very subtle, kind of shallow in detail. And then as we flip it over, pretty standard in terms of Thrunite construction. Standard tail switch there, nothing to write home about. The side switch, very standard for Thrunite. Everything about this pretty much is what we've come to know from Thrunite and their product lineup. But now taking a look at the BSS version 5, a little bit coarser on the knurling. So you'll notice that knurling a little bit coarser. And here we don't have quite as much in the way of a cutout on the tail cap here, but just a subtle sort of chamfering over, everything kind of, angled over. Very nicely done. Again, that same construction. You end up with your side switch and your tail switch and everything you've come to expect. And when we look at the heads, again, very similar. A little bit of a cutout for heat dissipation in both cases. Rotate this around. Both of these are going to be a USB Type-C rechargeable flashlight, so no real surprises here. Having the exact same port cover, very straightforward. And even furthermore, as we get into this, taking these and looking straight in on the heads, maybe a little bit of a difference here, but not too much. I mean, you can see, just generally speaking, both of these with a smooth reflector, not much in the way of orange peel at all. In fact, a very smooth reflector, and that's going to come out in the pattern of the actual beam, the pattern of the throw of the light. And the only other real major noticeable thing that I would say is the fact that on the BSS version 5, first and foremost, you have the Black Scout logo here on the front, but the fact that the actual bezel is threaded, and that does allow a couple of things. And as you saw here, really threading on a strike bezel, and it's fairly aggressive, where here on the TN12 Pro, it does have a little bit of a strike bezel, but it's not nearly as aggressive, and it's, you know, in my opinion, not really too much in the way of an effective weapon. Now I'm going to open the box for the BSS version 5. I do have all the little goodies in here, and I haven't fully broken all of this out yet, but the reason why I'm doing this, first and foremost, both of these lights coming with their USB Type-C charging cable, both of them coming with their user's manual, both of them coming with, you know, your lanyard and your spare O-rings and all those goodies. But the main thing to point out that the BSS version 5 also does come with this little bit of a lens, and this does tint the actual beam, which if you look at it here, it's hard to see, but it does have a red hue. So if I can get the light to kind of shine through here, and in fact, let's just do it this way. Little long press, and underneath, there you go. So you can see there clearly a red hint. And so if you really wanted to, instead of running the strike bezel on the BSS version 5, you want to be a little more covert and not really kill your night vision, you can run this way. The threads are pretty solid, a little bit fine, so it just takes a second to find them. But again there, as I long press, here you can see now mounted on the BSS version 5. So that would do that for you if you so choose. And the only other thing really worth noting other than the light performance is the pouch. And again, both of these do come with a standard nylon pouch. So very straightforward, very simple, and an easy way to carry your light if you want to put it on your belt. Now, when we start to talk about performance, this is where these two lights really do start to differentiate. Now, we're going to talk about the difference between Candela and lumen output. And there is a difference between the two. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail until we start to run these, and then you'll really see the difference. But the first thing I'm going to say is this BSS version 5 can be impacted, and the beam shape can be impacted by the strike bezel. Now, this is not going to be perfect, and part of this, you're going to have to take my word for it. But as I cycle through the modes here, I'm just going to put this on a low mode, and as I shine down, really at this point, you'll see the height of the light is really about 12 inches off the working surface, and you can see the shape of the beam. As I cast off and to the sides, killing my office lights now, you'll notice it does make a bit of a star shape. That's because of that strike bezel. So you'll notice there the strike bezel does impact the overall flood capabilities, but it adds that strike capability. So if you're kind of like me and you don't need a strike bezel, well, there you go. So removing the strike bezel at this point, you get the full advantage of that full flood with that reasonable hotspot. And side by side here, you can see the TN12 Pro on the left. This is the BSS on the right. And this is the difference between the cool white and the neutral white beam. So again, the BSS version 5 in the neutral white, and then the TN12 Pro in the cool white. Now, both of these are in their low modes. And with that, you're starting to already see a difference. Look at the difference in the hotspot on the TN12 Pro. A lot hotter in the middle, whereas the actual BSS version 5 has a softer hotspot. It's a wider flood. It's a little bit easier on the eyes. So you just need to decide, do you want the lumen output of the BSS version 5, or what I'm going to say now, the Candela punch that you get with the TN12 Pro? And that, in essence, becomes the crux of the sort of decision-making process here. So we're going to run through these a mode at a time and talk about each one of them. So a long press in both cases. Now both of these are in that moonlight mode, or what Thrunite actually calls their firefly mode. So here on the left, the TN12 is 0.5 lumens versus the BSS version 5 is 0.3. Now, is there any appreciable difference? Well, again, this is where you need to differentiate what you're looking for. You're going to get a softer, wider, more floody style beam, more even on the BSS version 5, little more hotspot, little punchier on the TN12 Pro. But again, remember what I said. The lumen spread on these is very similar. It's 0.3 versus 0.5. That's not too much different, yet the hotspot is drastically different. The flood is drastically different. So that's just something to pay attention to. And for the rest of the modes, single press in both cases. When you long press, it does go between low, medium, high, low, medium, high. So that's the case for the TN12 Pro. And then again, here you can see, this is low, medium, high, low, medium, high. And that is the case for the BSS V5. So the low mode here on the TN12 Pro, this is 50 lumens versus on the Thrunite BSS 5 is 29 lumens. So again, more lumen output coming out of the TN12 Pro through the low mode so far versus the BSS version 5. Another long press here, long press, going up a mode. So the medium mode on the TN12 Pro is 220 lumens, but now on the BSS version 5, this jumps up higher. This is 355 lumens. Another long press, and you'll notice that the TN12 Pro goes back to the low mode, long press medium, long press high. On the BSS version 5, a long press, low, medium, high. So after a period of time, both of these will go back to the low mode and then cycle back up through the different intensities. But now in the high mode, here on the TN12 Pro, we have 550 lumens versus here on the BSS version 5, it's 1413 lumens. So in essence, this flashlight is almost triple the actual lumen output from the TN12 Pro. And I really can't tell you that the BSS version 5 looks 3 times brighter than the TN12 Pro. And on top of it, as we flip these up, again, you'll notice that the BSS version 5 is very even, which is nice for the eyes. But at the same time, the TN12 Pro is very punchy. It has that defined center hotspot. And again, I have yet to talk about Candela, but we will shortly. And to me, even though the BSS version 5 is almost triple the lumen output, it doesn't necessarily look any brighter than the TN12 Pro. In fact, if anything, I can almost say the TN12 Pro looks brighter. A single press on each of them turns off. Now a double press on the BSS version 5 side switch, that's turbo, TN12 Pro, that's turbo. So again, here, looking at the difference in the beams, the TN12 Pro on turbo, 1900 lumens, and then again on the BSS version 5 higher at 2676 lumens. But I'm going to say that again, you can't necessarily say that one looks brighter than the other, with the exception being, in my opinion, due to the cool white and the fact that there is higher Candela punch on the TN12 Pro. The TN12 Pro does appear, in my opinion, to be brighter overall than the BSS version 5, even though given it does have significantly less lumen output. Now for the demonstration, both of these, as we push the tail cap, single press is going to lock in the turbo mode. And then on both of them, a momentary press is going to blip that turbo on and off. And that is the case for both of these. So great functionality, great features. I love the programming. And the only last thing worth mentioning, a triple press on the BSS version 5. Your strobe here being 1200 lumens versus here on the TN12 Pro. Triple press, that's 560. But again, as we look at these side by side, which one looks brighter? Which is more disorienting? It's hard to say. Both of these in strobe, in my opinion, the TN12 Pro, more disorienting, harder punch, brighter light, and a little bit better in the strobe, in my opinion. Clicking both of the tail switches at this point, getting them fully in that turbo mode. Again, you can see these side by side. The TN12 Pro, very hot in terms of that punch. Very wide and even beam on the BSS version 5. And the cool versus the neutral white, in my opinion, making a difference. Now keep in mind, at this point, we're really talking about the Candela, the punch of the light at distance. And here on the TN12 Pro, this has a 36,000 Candela, capable of spanning 380 meters of throw. On the BSS version 5, half the Candela. Only 16,200 Candela, capable of throwing 255 meters. And so again, that really does become a crux of the argument between each one of these. Do you want the TN12 Pro with that Candela and that punch? Do you want the BSS version 5 with the warmer neutral light? Now, granted, you can get either one of these in neutral or in cool. So that's another thing. I don't have an exact apples to apples comparison here, but I thought it was worth the discussion. So maybe if you were to get the BSS version 5 in the cool white, or again, the TN12 Pro in the neutral white, and then compare these apples and apples, it might make a difference. But to me, it's that centralized hotspot. It's the punch. It's the Candela, the focus of the beam, and the ability to punch at distance, throwing the lumens over distance in all modes. So it's not always about the lumens. In my opinion, it's usually about Candela in terms of your effective ability to pick up on brightness. And that to me is the fundamental difference between the TN12 Pro and the BSS version 5. And so, all right, guys, there you have it. A comparison between the TN12 Pro and the BSS version 5. Now, there's no doubt that both of these are fantastic flashlights. TN12 Pro, I've carried a ton. Great flashlight. I love it. Both of these are solid options, but you just kind of got to make a decision. So if you were looking at both of these, which one would you pick? I'm curious about your thoughts. Leave some comments below. I'd love to hear from you which one of the two of these you would pick. And do me a favor, just reach out below. Let me know your thoughts. And again, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Thrunite who did provide these for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor, take a look at my Outer Limitless channel, which is more on my primary gear. On that channel, I cover everything from hiking, camping, and backpacking experiences, all the gear that goes with it. So from sleep systems, shelter systems, knives, axes, flashlights, you name it, that's my Outer Limitless YouTube channel. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.